What did you say the victim was?
The victim is an Asian male. He is in his late 30s. We have not identified the female. She appears to be she's a white female, appears to be early 30s would be my best guess.
It's going to sound insane because it is insane, Akshaya Kubiak told the 911 dispatcher.
I'm out here this afternoon to brief you on a homicide investigation that we are conducting in the southwest part of the valley. I stress the details that I'm sharing right now are extremely preliminary, but at around 10:20 this morning, we received a 911 call reporting that a male or a female was unresponsive inside the residence.
It was 10 a.m. on July 16, 2020, and Kubiak, known as Ash Armand from Showtime's reality show Gigolos.
Okay, so who am I? Well, professionally, I work as a male escort for a company called Cowboys for Angels. I used to do a show called Gigolos on Showtime.
Was calling from his Las Vegas condo. Nearby lay the dead body of a woman. We took mushrooms together, said our prayers together, put on Avatar together, he recounted. At 6'1" and 205 pounds, Kubiak's imposing figure contrasted sharply with his trembling voice.
I'm also, my background is in massage therapy and fitness. And I've studied about like sexuality for a long time. It's something that I've always been really interested in, and how affects society and how people interact.
I don't know if you've ever done mushrooms before, he said, but I was no longer in this reality. I was in different realities. And then I saw the person next to me. The person next to him was Herleen Kaur Dulai, a 29-year-old Temple University graduate with shiny black hair, large brown eyes, and a sparkling smile. She was gorgeous. She modeled occasionally, but was known for being shy and reserved. Raised in California by an aerospace engineer father and a mother with 2 master's degrees, both of whom had emigrated from India, Herleen was the cherished youngest of 3 children. Her parents affectionately nicknamed her Happy Herleen because of her constant smile. Though she was quiet around most people, Dulai was a bundle of mischief at home, always cracking jokes. So when the social media influencer brutally beat his girlfriend to death, his fans couldn't believe him capable of such violence. But was this a crime of passion or something far more sickening? On July 16, 2020, YouTuber, social media influencer, and former reality TV star Ash Armand made a distraught phone call to 911. He told the dispatcher that he had just awoken to find his partner, 29-year-old Herleen Dulai, unresponsive. Ash Armand was panicked, seemingly desperate to revive the woman beside him. He revealed that he had taken magic mushrooms earlier and could not recall what had happened. So the dispatcher instructed the 38-year-old to perform CPR. The problem? Herleen was not suffering from a sudden heart attack or drug overdose. She had been beaten to death. When paramedics arrived at the Las Vegas home, Herleen was completely unrecognizable. She lay in a pool of her own blood, with her face beaten black and blue. The hulking, muscular Ash Armand assured the emergency medical team that he would never do such a thing.
Officers and medical personnel arrived on scene, and that female was pronounced deceased. The male boyfriend who lives in the residence, who is an Asian male in his late 30s, was taken into custody. At this point, we're in the process of obtaining a search warrant to process the scene. And our initial observation, we believe there was a struggle or a battery of some sort, but this, again, it was very, very preliminary, and that's from the initial walkthrough of the scene. So with that, I will take a couple questions, but I stress I don't have much more to share than that.
He then changed his story to claim that the young woman had attacked him first. This was followed by a confession, and Ash Armand was arrested.
We believe there was some type of struggle, but again, it's still too early. Our initial observations, we believe we actually have the male in custody at this point. So it does appear that there is a struggle of some sort between the in custody male boyfriend and the deceased female.
Police initially believed that both Armand and his victim had been under the influence of drugs at the time of the incident. Armand claimed to have blacked out and could not recall specific details. And while it appeared clear that Armand had physically beaten Herleen to death with his bare hands, the full extent of the violence was somehow far more shocking. Herleen had traces of MDMA, caffeine, and alcohol in her system at the time of death. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma, with strangulation reported as the secondary cause. The 29-year-old suffered bruises, abrasions, lacerations, broken bones and fractures across her entire body. This included the inside of her mouth and on her ears. Herleen suffered severe internal bleeding, and her hands were marked with defensive wounds. Herleen had fought back, though she did not stand a chance against the 6'1", 200-pound man who was viciously assaulting her. Her body was also covered in candle wax. After further investigation of Armand's Las Vegas residence, police discovered that blood had been cleaned from the bathroom. They also found trace pieces of blood on the washing machine and a packed suitcase, indicating that Armand had considered fleeing before calling 911. These findings revealed a time frame that made it impossible for Armand's desperate call to 911 to have taken place directly after the social media star woke up. Armand only made the call after he had already attempted to cover up or conceal some of the horror that he had caused. In the immediate aftermath of Armand's arrest, fans and followers refused to believe his guilt in the murder. Many defended Armand, holding the fitness influencer up as a sincere, spiritual man incapable of hurting anyone. This was in spite of the fact that Armand himself admitted to the brutal murder. Some of those fans who did accept Armand's guilt went as far as to argue that he should be forgiven for his crime. The guilty man was remarkably popular in certain circles. At this point in his life, Armand was focused on improving his social status and his fame, but he had initially risen to prominence as a male escort by appearing on the reality TV series Gigolos. His usual female company included fellow clout chasers, quasi-celebrities, models, and sex workers. So, how did a down-to-earth young woman from an educated, wealthy family end up in the home of someone like Armand? Herleen Dulai, though undeniably an attractive young woman, did not fit the billing of Armand's type. She was well-educated and came from an affluent background, but she was also reportedly vulnerable, insecure, and suffered from mental health issues. Armand positioned himself as a spiritual healer, and so it is likely that this, along with his striking good looks, Herleen had only recently moved to Vegas when she met Armand. According to the friends of Herleen, the 29-year-old was straight edge, meaning she did not consume drugs or alcohol. Whether it was part of a healing plan for Herleen or not, Armand changed this. The night of Herleen's murder was allegedly another session in Herleen's long-term healing plan. The couple had been romantically involved for some time prior, and on this night Armand had planned to further Herleen's spiritual journey with magic mushrooms, alcohol, and then bizarrely, a viewing of the James Cameron movie Avatar. Armand has never revealed the full details as to what really happened that night. Whether Herleen attacked him first, as Armand previously claimed, is hardly important when considering the extent of the violence inflicted upon her. What may have begun as self-defense on Armand's part turned into something else entirely, something unimaginably cruel. Armand's history with sex work was put under the spotlight after the murder of Herleen Dulai.
How to kind of master your own sexuality so you know what you're doing, but it's not something that dictates your behavior.
While Ash attempted to portray himself both on reality TV and on social media as a gentle giant with a deep, caring nature, many saw Armand's work as a gigolo as predatory, especially with regard to Herleen. The industry in general is often closely associated with mental health issues and drug use. Add in the fact that many of Armand's potential clients were likely desperate and lonely, and take into account the amounts Armand charged for his company, which included an outrageous $25,000 for a week, and Armand's work history is essentially one giant red flag. At the time of Herleen's death, she was reportedly funding Armand's lavish lifestyle in exchange for her spiritual healing. An envelope adorned with the words Ash's rent was found in her apartment. It is also believed that Armand was in financial trouble, as he had become notorious for splashing cash without care and did not have a steady source of income. In October of 2021, Armand stood trial for the murder of Herleen Dulai. While Armand had previously admitted to violently beating his girlfriend to death, when it came time for trial, Armand pleaded not guilty. He attempted to argue that because of the amount of drugs in his system at the time of the incident, which included he could not be held fully accountable for his actions, Armand was offered a deal of voluntary manslaughter, which he accepted. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison with the possibility of parole after just 8 years. Armand's defense team pushed for this to be reduced to 4 years, though their efforts were unsuccessful. While Ash Armand has expressed deep regret and remorse, his attempts to get out of serving considerable jail time contradict this. Herleen was murdered in the most brutal manner, and for her family and friends, there is no amount of time served by Armand that will make the tragedy any easier to endure. The world of reality TV has long been clouded by stories of abuse and misfortune, but rarely has there ever been a story quite as disturbing as the one involving Ash Armand and Herleen Dulai.